lots of before the spring, I have to say. I was laughing when I saw that.
We'll do that later.
Yeah, I was like, we were talking about it, so we probably both get it. Yeah, yeah.
All right, we're showing 6 o'clock, so let's get started with tonight's Midvale Planning Commission meeting. We like to start our meetings by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. These people know.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's get this going. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Erickson.
Here.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Tippett.
Here.
Commissioner Snow.
Here.
Commissioner Lidke.
Here.
Commissioner Edwards.
Here.
Commissioner Kasparian.
Here.
Full house. Thank you.
Did I win that? Full house?
This is true. All right, did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from the
Yes.
previous meetings? All right, did anyone find anything for feedback?
No.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from January 22nd, 2005.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, sounds good, thank you. All right, we have 4 items up on the agenda this evening. I'm so old, I have to take my glasses off to read. First up is Joseph Jr. requests conditional use permit approval of a vehicle sales major business to be located at 7150 South, 300 West, Suite number 6 and 7 in the Clean Industrial CI Zone. Jonathan will be presenting.
Thanks, Chair Erickson. Did you get the presentation one? Should be in there now. Might take a second. You want to double check it's in there?
In this time, if you haven't signed in, please feel free to do so. It's outside this door out here. That'll help us just keep track. If you have comments, the like.
I thought I put it in there.
It's the internet. To the internet today.
It's coming.
I'll just plug in one. I don't know why it's not showing up.
Oh, that TV.
Cool.
He's looking at it.
Okay. So this is for a conditional use permit for a vehicle sales business in the Clean Industrial Zone. And it's not, okay. So this is just a vicinity map. This is over here, over by the freeway interchange in 72nd South. They have sufficient parking for the use, and there'll be the 2 units at the north end of the building, as shown in the parking plans. So they meet all the requirements for conditional use. They meet parking especially for the type of business they want to run. For this item, I have not received any public comments for. If you have any questions for me, just let me know.
Any questions? No? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I have one.
Yeah.
This is just sales, it's not repair, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some other units in the current building that
There is
are
at the other
already-
end, yeah.
Yeah, at the other end that are repair,
Okay.
but not these ones.
Okay. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Do you know Jonathan? Okay. All right, so we'll open this up for public hearing. If anyone has any comments, please come forward, state your name.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I think this is a great place for vehicle sales. It seems fitting for the part of Midvale that it's in.
Yeah, then there's been one there several years ago, so it's not like it's something new that's going to be there.
Okay. All right.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move that we approve the conditional use permit for a vehicle sales major business to be located at 7150 South 300 West, Suites 6 and 7, with the findings noted in the staff report.
I second it.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Snow,
Yes.
Commissioner Lidke,
Yes.
Commissioner Tippett.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we have had comments on the next item on the agenda, so I will say, just to reiterate, for education-wise, if you have a comment when the public hearing is open, you're more than welcome to come up to the podium, state your name and the concerns you have. We have received, I think, 5 comments. Is that right, Jonathan? Okay. But we'll introduce it. We'll have staff introduce us to the project, and then we'll proceed from there. Okay.
Johnny, can we turn that television on?
Yeah, I'm not sure
Is that
what
off?
it's possible to.
Yeah, I disconnected it. Trying to see if the presentation is uploaded itself, but not yet.
Okay. So I will introduce Anderson Development LLC requests small-scale master plan approved of a 27-unit townhome development located at 6766 South 300 East in the single-family residential duplex overlay SF1 DO zone. Jonathan will be presenting, and both Robin and you have the same last name as the developer. That's interesting, okay.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
No relation.
So like she said, this is for a small-scale master plan. It's proposed 27 units. For a bit of context, it is 4 properties currently, and as the next item will show. So it's 4 properties currently, and that's what the development is proposed to be located on. Here's a bit of the site plan for some context for a couple of my next slides here. Being a master plan development, there is incentives that can be granted if they perform certain, if they meet these certain requirements. And there's 6. And I won't read them off for you for sake of time, but they're identified in my staff report specifically for what it is. I have one in bold, number 4, and I'll get to that one a little bit later. So 1 through 3, they have met. There is a trail that goes throughout this project. The minimum 15% is improved common space. They've proposed 18, as you can see in the plan with the green. That is their improved common space, and then also they have to meet a 50% minimum requirement for open space, which includes the improved open space, and they're at 51% for the project. Number 4 deals with facade design. So minimum of 60% on the front and 40% on the side that is brick or equivalent material. So the proposed development, and I'll flip through these here real quick. So these are the front and rear elevations. And then the proposed sides as well as a rendering of the sides. So they have shown 83% of the front structural facade as brick or equivalent, and currently the plans are 23% on the side facades, which is less than the 40. There is a verse that allows for you as the planning commission to grant a reduction to this. So they're potentially seeking a reduction for this. As of right now, it is not met without that reduction that you guys would give. As part of master plan development, those 6 criteria that they have or will meet, depending on your determination, there's incentives that they're looking to be granted for this project, which is number 3 and 4 in section D for master plan developments in SF1 zone, which is to subject to building code, diminish interior setback criteria and reduce required yards interior to the development to encourage cluster development. So they're looking to potentially be reducing the side setbacks from 8 feet to 6 feet between, the structures. And then allow for development of private roads and diminish frontage requirements along private roads. There is a proposed private drive throughout this project that is 41, or a private street, that's 41 feet wide, so it wouldn't meet the minimum of 50 feet for a public right-of-way. And as Chair Erickson mentioned, we have received some comments prior to the meeting, which all of you were sent to read prior. So I kind of summarized a little bit what they are. The main concerns, density, a little bit of traffic, environmental. There was a couple specific comments about the concrete washout area that you could potentially ask the applicant to, address with that. I've included a picture of where that would be, which is at the bottom of this screen, number 4 over here. Any questions for me before I let the applicant present?
Are we not requiring guest parking stalls?
With master plan developments, the parking standards are up to you guys. So right now they have, and for the minimum for context, a single family dwelling is 2 off-street parking stalls. So they have 2 car garages as well as 20-foot wide by 20 feet deep driveways proposed. As far as guest parking, there is none required by the ordinance unless you guys set it.
And then the road was 41 feet and 50 is required?
No, 41 feet is the proposed.
Okay.
For a private road, the minimum is actually 35. But for a public right-of-way, it has to be 50 feet wide.
Okay.
Yeah, so private and public are different. And this is a private road.
So the road is wider than what's required?
For a private, by our standards, yes.
So are there any issues if there is street parking and we have emergency vehicles in there? Would that be an issue?
That's probably a better question for the applicant, but I'm not sure what they discussed with the fire marshal of the potential of having on-street parking. But you can ask them and they can address that.
Can you expound on the concrete washout area, the concerns about that?
There's some concerns about, potential, the chemicals and stuff used, as well as the toxicity of concrete and that. There is obviously homes surrounding this entire development. So those comments were from the homeowners over here on the southern border. So
They're pretty strict on concrete washouts.
yes, and our SWIP guy, Dave Clark, is
Yeah.
pretty on top of construction companies for maintaining those.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's quite a bit of oversight, it sounds like.
Yeah, they're always, engineering is always inspecting developments, and with this one having, obviously they'll be doing curb cuts and stuff into our right-of-way, the public right-of-way on 300 East, so the engineering team is going to be well aware of this one, and they already know of that.
So
Okay.
it's not washed out on the dirt, they have to have approved containers and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Is the applicant here to make comment? If you'd like, you can come forward. Tell us a little bit about the project that maybe Jonathan, of course, he didn't miss, but you could expound upon.
Thanks, Jonathan. Again, Jonathan is not related, so this is not, it just works out that way. Believe it or not, there's a few Andersons out here in Utah. So. My name is Adam Anderson from Anderson Development,
If you could speak up.
Sorry, yeah.
It's supposed to put the public record and those in the
Okay. I'm Adam Anderson from Anderson Development, and I'm here representing the Trailside Reserve application for the duplex product. We're looking at putting on 67, 66 South and 300 East. I think maybe just it might help to kind of introduce how we got to this point with this product. I think when we looked at the ordinance and the land, it was already had a duplex overlay on it. And we wanted to kind of do something that was somewhat promoting a family kind of oriented product, but not be $1.2 million as an infill piece. And so when we looked at this, we said, how could we make something that's compliant, that the city kind of already saw a direction here with a duplex overlay. So we took that approach. Let's see if we can do a duplex product rather than a townhome product. And so that's kind of how we came up with this. Our intended audience, we're partnering with Brighton Homes. We got a representative here from Brighton Homes as well. And I think the intended goal here is to promote a family kind of ownership. We're not intending to build to rent this product. It's really meant for family ownership. So where do you get your first rung at in ownership? This might be it for a family. It worked for me and my family when I was young. I was a twin home and eventually worked into a single family, et cetera. So looking at this product, when we originally laid it out, we said, how can we provide a good community feel? We thought when we did a site analysis, putting specific stringent 8,000 square foot lots on this made it somewhat fragmented and disconnected the individual homes from each other. And that's why we went to the pad lot design, which allowed us to incorporate the trail. As you look around there, that trail interconnects beyond everyone. So it provides some connectivity beyond just walking up and down the street. There's trails that go beyond it. There's places to sit and to commingle with your neighbors, et cetera. So we thought limiting the rear yards and promoting more of an access for the community wide was a direction we wanted to go with this. And that's why we looked at the small scale subdivision, which is an ordinance that your city allows. And so that's the direction we went with that. And then as far as the elevations and the promotion, the way we took that, the parking was a serious significant issue. Regardless of what you put on parking, it really comes down to what works. And so, you notice we upsized the road. And the reason we upsized the road is because I can deed restrict these things so people don't speed, so people don't park, but deed restricting a mortgage with restrictions on speed and parking, I know is not going to work. I can put on the plat, you can't park there, but I know that's not going to work. So common sense stuff says, if I put a 35-foot road, someone's going to park there, which is going to limit and create problems down the road, right? So you're going to have to have significant enforcing. So we upsized the road to allow for some level of parking. We don't promote parking on the street, but it will invariably happen to some degree. So rather than trying to get it through enforcement, let's just allow it to potentially happen without getting overboard. And that's where we came up with the parking in the driveways. Let's do 20-foot driveways. Not the kind of driveways where I drive a truck myself. If you park in a driveway and half the truck hangs out on the road, that's not, to me, a good parking plan. So I wanted to make sure the driveways were big enough that you could actually park a full-size car in. So that's why we went to 20-foot plus a 2-car garage. And so we feel with that, that's 108 parking units off-street in this subdivision, which helps to mitigate parking up and down the street and stuff like that. We didn't want to see parking on 300 East. We needed to have this subdivision self-contained, and that's kind of the direction we went with the parking and the layout on that. We also implemented some LID, low impact development procedures on this. We have some bioswales, rain gardens. We really wanted to promote, I know the city has a emphasis on trying to promote that too, where we're not putting a big impact on development. So we're trying to retain as much stormwater on site as possible, and that's why we implemented the low impact development procedures on this. In fact, you'll see we used sod very sparingly on this site. It is there. We want kids to play in the sod, et cetera, but you'll see a lot of zero-scape, and that's all there with the intent of doing, we have a storm tech system on site to help keep the stormwater on site as much as possible. We had to control how much went into the city. We can't always control the big influx of rains. We want to control the flooding, but to that same extent, we would like to see as much water that comes onto the site permeate back into the aquifer that's directly below the site. And so that was the intent of the lid procedures that we implemented on this. let's see, what else can we talk about? We are asking for variance on the facade. And we looked at this, and I don't know if you have access to this, I think it was page 40, it showed L101 in the landscape plan. If you look at that,
I think you can just talk.
I can toggle here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go back.
Okay, well, let's see if I can get there. Okay. Oops. Other way?
Yeah, it's the one with the green.
Did I pass it? Okay. Well, this shows what that wraparound might look like. Okay. Okay, so this element between each home, if you notice, there's a Japanese lilac tree. And the reason we did that is we look at this, you look at some streetscapes, and really what we're looking at is the frontage of the homes. So rather than ask for a reduction on the side, what we wanted to do is elevate the front facade so we got a better streetscape. And by putting that Japanese lilac in between each of those homes, that helped to screen the sides, and with the reduced setbacks, you're not seeing as much of the side, so we put that more to the front. So as you're going down the streets, you really see that elevated front facade, and that was the reason we did the design that way. In addition, the city requires a tree every 30 linear feet, so that made sense to put those trees there and strategically kind of screen between the structures, if you will. Now along 300, we went with some locusts. Those are a little bit bigger, and those will help screen a little bit more from 300. So from the public's view into the subdivision, looking from 300, it'll have a little bit more screening doing that, and that was the reason we did that. So the variance we're asking for is really an increase from 60 to 83% on the front, and a reduction on the side, moving, not really reducing the side, but moving it to the front is kind of what we're asking for on the facades. I think as we look at this too, this is a rendering of what that might look like. You can see we've taken that brick facade, wrapped it around the corner by a couple of feet, more so than typically you might see 18 inches on that wrap. That's well more than 18 inches. So even if you're looking at it from an angle, you're still seeing a masonry wrap coming around the corner there. So it's not just a premium facade and then off to a less premium product on the side. And then on the top, we're still using siding. It's another premium product up on top. So it's not that we're negating it 100%. It's just choosing where to put it, I guess. So in this subdivision, it made sense to us to apply it to the front more so, and then frame it with those Japanese lilacs on both sides of the homes. And so that was the emphasis of why we did it that way. So I guess that's what we would ask for here is on that variance. Outside of that, we really tried to make this zone compliant. Suggesting this is very similar. It's actually, I think, a little bit less dense than the one to the north. It's almost exactly the same as far as density. We didn't want to get crazy on density. We didn't want to put in townhomes. We thought this was a good product. Duplex makes sense to us in this zone, and so we said, how could we get a nice home in here with a good community that interconnects with trails and allows young families to become part of Midvale? And so we thought this would be a good community to do that. So that was the emphasis and the reason we did this. So is there any questions I can answer?
Can you answer the concrete washout and address that?
Yeah, great question. We do have a SWIP that's already been submitted. We have our NOI permit from the state that's already been, and that's all on compliance go. So I think we have 3 or 4 that have been reviewed by the city and are there for inspection. Our SWIP plan has best management procedures. I think you mentioned before about the cleanouts. They don't allow us to just dump it in the ground. That probably was when I was a kid. Of course, that was a long time ago. That was a pretty common building practice, just dump out the concrete in the ground and bury everything up against the house. You didn't even get rid of construction debris. That's not the case anymore. So they have procedures in place. They do weekly inspections. They will be reporting to the city. Ascena is a third-party compliance group that will be implementing the SWIP and ensuring that it's complied with. We're doing a project right now in Riverdale. They do that. I get emails every day, so does the city. They'll tell you exactly, hey, you're getting too full on your concrete clean out. You need to come clean it. Any kind of environmental concerns, they definitely stay on top of it. And that's the reason we do a third party. So if it's self-monitored, then you kind of question if these guys really in it for themselves, so this is a third-party group, they don't do that. So a lot of the construction, in fact, they got it down the street here, I noticed that they got a big SWIP sign on the front, gives you points of contact, some of their procedures, et cetera, and so things like a 120-page document or something like that that they have implemented for this site that they would suggest that the concrete washout is one of those things. If that's a concern about its location, I'm not opposed to moving it. If we need to move that somewhere, certainly could look at that.
Okay, thank you
You
very
bet.
much.
Thank you.
All right, I saw a few people trickle in. Just a reminder, please sign in. That really helps with our public records. If you do have a comment, we'll be able to make that accurate in the public records. Our next step is to open this up for public hearing. So if anyone does have a comment, you're more than welcome to come up to the front, state your name, and let us know. If it gets out of hand, we'll put a time limit on it, but I don't think we'll get there on this. If we do, we will. So feel free to come up if you have any comments.
Good evening. My name is David Garce. My wife and I live on Acoma Road, 369 East Acoma. So we drive by this, the intersection of 3rd East, and it's about 6705 South. And we're about 5-6 houses from the intersection. Personally, from my career that I've retired from, I'm very much in favor of interior block development. I think it's a very appropriate, and if it's done well architecturally and complies with all the requirements, is a really good use for the land. What our concern is, and I've talked with 7 of my neighbors who I know are property owners. They couldn't be here tonight, and I'm not representing them. I'm only going to tell you what we talked about, and they can vouch for themselves. But they did agree that I could use their names if anyone had a question about who they were, who I was talking to. The only thing that is very, very concerning to me and the people that I talk to who live on Acoma Road is right now, well, as long as the road has been there, it's 25.5 feet wide. And when there's on-street parking on both sides of the road, there's only one car width that can travel on Acoma Road. And why this is important is because Acoma Road is the quickest and most straightforward way of getting from 3rd East to 7th East, and if you wanted to turn north or south. But there's an extreme amount, especially in the last couple of years, there have been a lot more on-street parking, and when you're coming up to a car who's coming against, to you, you have to pull over and let that car pass and then pull back in. So that's one concern, is additional, and the developer's done a great job, I think, of addressing that on-site parking. There have been other developments on 3rd East that are not as residential in their architectural design as this one is, so that's great. But our main concern is not only the width of Acoma. You guys aren't going to do it. You can't really do anything about the width of it. But what I believe you can do, and I strongly recommend and ask that you do this and take it into consideration, is the addition of speed bumps on 3rd East, on Acoma Road. It is very dangerous to have people go even 5 or 10 miles over the speed limit, and a lot of times there are people that are doing that all the time. And where I live is right on the inside corner of Acoma Road as it kind of forks out from Perrine. And coming around that way in the wintertime, I've had my mailbox broken down 3 times. I've had, my kids are grown, and so they're not here, but grandkids and other kids that play on this block is very concerning to us. And I have filled out and applied for speed bumps in the past, and the only thing we got was a speed limit sign, a temporary speed limit sign. That's not good enough. In this instance, not only that, because of the property that's being developed now, I've got no problem with developing, but with the almost vacant land on the east side, the level property, that's going to add probably sooner than later more high-density housing projects with the appropriate amount of cars. So I didn't really figure it out until tonight when I saw what the ordinance was for the number of cars per unit. It's based on the number of bedrooms per car, per unit. And I don't know the off-street parking is. But again, the development, the project that you have here in front of you tonight, I totally agree with. What this project doesn't handle or doesn't address is the additional impact on the streets that are just beyond the borders of this particular project. Thank you. Any questions?
I think I'm good, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I say something?
Of course,
real quick?
yes.
I don't know if you've made use of this yet, but Midvale City has a traffic control committee. So if as a neighbor or as a neighborhood, you would like a traffic control device like a speed hump or a speed bump, you can go to that committee, and the committee consists of the city engineer. I think there's a fire department representative, police representative, and then that committee has the ability to help you get these types of devices if they are warranted.
And Aubrey's telling me probably no on the speed humps as part of that, but other traffic control devices would be considered. Okay, yeah. Right, thank you. Do we have any other? Yes?
Am I good to plug into this? Is this just for the monitors, or?
Yeah, it's just for presentation purposes. Sorry.
Maybe. Sometimes they work.
I don't know that it will
Okay,
actually work.
perfect.
Sorry.
Just for the record, so I'm Stephen Anderson. I live on Twin Bridges Lane. I was going to pull up the map of 3rd East and Twin Bridges and that congested area there. I share some similar concern with the gentleman that just spoke. Between 3rd East and 7th East, you have to take Perrine Drive, I think is what it's called, and Acoma Road. And I'll confirm and I'll back him up on that. Acoma Road is a joke, and I'm surprised that with the parking there that the emergency management hasn't done something, because at times, I don't even think you can get a truck between some of the vehicles when they're parked there. So maybe some suggestions there is with this development going in and adding additional congestion to that complicated area is maybe mark one side of that street, no parking. Just a suggestion for Acoma Road. My other issue with the development is living on Twin Bridges Lane. These duplexes look not dissimilar from the ones that are on Twin Bridges Lane and or even Roman Court. Very similar in size, very similar development, a little bit more spread apart, a little bit more green space. But we have 4 extra parking spaces in our development, and we still have a parking issue. We still can fit 2 cars on our driveway, additional to 2 cars in the garage. And we still have an issue with people parking on 3rd East, and it gets really congested down there towards the end, and it makes it very difficult to maneuver through and out.
Can you park on the street,
People,
on your street?
we
the
cannot
private
park
road?
on our street. It is
Okay.
not wide enough, but people do. They still do. We still have the issue with our neighbors parking there on our street, and majority of the time, this is what happens is we intend these units to be family-owned, family units, but inevitably, what's going to happen is people are going to buy them and then move out and use them as income properties. It's happened in our development. I would say that maybe 50% of Twin Bridges Lane is income properties. And with that comes renters who have so many vehicles, and that's what ends up happening is the overflow of vehicles ends up on 3rd East. And I feel for those neighbors that live there on 3rd East, have their driveways on 3rd East. So I know that the developer says that there's room for parking on that street. But you don't know at what point does the HOA for that development come in and go, we're not going to allow parking on our street anymore because of the obstacle that it may create for people parking on the street. So I'm really hesitant to believe that it will stay that way. because it could be a problem for snow removal and every other, once you start getting garbage trucks in there, as they have to get in there and do what they need to do, and they understand that people parking on that street becomes an obstacle, they're going to start changing their bylaws to their development to maybe eliminate parking. And so those individuals will move to 3rd East, which is already narrow and neck down when you get towards the end of it, right there where that development is going. So I am concerned about the parking. There is no additional parking other than the driveways that I see, other than maybe parking on the street there. But I would say, I personally would like to see a few parking spaces besides the street and the development. And that's just coming from living in a duplex development that has parking issues and understands the problem that exists with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Cindy Sharkey. I also live on Twin Bridges Lane, and I'm here to speak in favor of this project. I appreciate the design. I appreciate the development. I think it'll be an improvement for sure in our neighborhood. I think it'll increase my property value. My unit actually abuts this one, so I'm directly adjacent to it. I think it'll be an improvement, and I appreciate the density. I think it works well with the neighborhood. I think it's a good addition to our neighborhood. I had 2 questions. Is this the proper format to ask the questions to?
Yeah.
Okay. So, there is, on the site plan that we looked at, maybe either Johnny might know or maybe the developer can answer the question. There's some green cross-hatching that is in the northwest section of the development, and that's basically close to my property line, so I'm wondering what that is. I saw some language in the plans that talked about a sump area, so I'm wondering if that's a detention or retention kind of pond, or if there's a sump. I'm not familiar with the use of that word in this kind of context. So are we talking about something like a sump that might have a motor, that might be running a motor or something like that, proximate to my property? I respect whatever decision the commissioners make on the request for the variance on the side facade. I will be looking out my unit on that side facade, and so I will be looking at a predominantly stucco wall. I'm just wondering if the developer might be willing to add maybe a couple of trees in order to enhance that view if the Planning Commission decides that the variance on the side facade is acceptable. Those are my statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jonathan, did you have a comment on the plans showing the green cross hatching? Was that the washout area?
No, this is on the north part. There's,
It's a material staging area.
yeah, so there's a material staging area up there, which is probably, I'm guessing, going to be used during construction. And then also up there, I believe, is one of the stormwater catch basins, if I remember right. So, yeah.
So when they say sump, is that something to be concerned about, like an electronic pump that would create noise?
Yeah, if you want to answer that, Adam.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had one before.
And I think, and if it's okay, I can circle back with you after. But I think what we're referring to, there is a sump up there with a storm detention, and this is part of the low-impact development. So we're doing bioswales and rain gardens to help capture some of the natural water that comes on the site and discharges it there. So it's going back, permeating back into the aquifer on site. I'm pretty sure that's what you're talking to, but we can double check and look on the site plan and review that.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate answering a bit of the question.
Yeah.
In my mind, I just think sump pumps and of my childhood, so.
Yeah, it's noisy and mechanical. There's nothing mechanical over there. This is all, the storm tech, it's all about managing the stormwater.
All right.
So, okay.
All right, thank you for that.
You bet.
Hello, my name is Bailey Crespo. I'm a resident on 6790 South, which is one of the closest roads that accesses State Street from the proposed unit. And, you know, I think we've talked enough about kind of traffic concerns, although I do have a little bit of questioning on like the amount of car trips per day that we can expect to see added to our road because of that, since we are such a close access point to the main artery roads. But I did want to just kind of bring up one of my other concerns, which is the amount of green space. So the development plan does meet the standard 15%. However, our neighborhood does not have a park for the community. The closest parks are approximately 1.3 to 1.4 miles away and requires families to cross either 72nd or Winchester. And that's not a street that I would feel comfortable having, kids in my family cross. So, especially not alone. So de facto, East Midvale Elementary has become the park for our neighborhood. And since that is a Title I school, I worry about just the, vulnerability of those children not having access to green space readily available to them. So with that, I would, between the traffic concerns, parking concerns, and green space, my, request would be to maybe reduce the number of units to incorporate a little bit more green space so that these young families have a place to go picnic, play, throw a ball around, things like that, so that they can, enjoy their neighborhood a little bit more than just a sidewalk. So, thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maren Keach. I'm a resident on 6790 as well. It's a very busy street. I brought my daughter here today because, I just want to show you our neighborhood does have children and we do worry about the traffic impact as well. People I think they take it as a challenge to hit the speed bumps as fast as they can or in between the speed bumps, We've talked a ton about traffic. We do need something besides these abandoned houses developed. I'm totally in agreement with that. It could beautify our neighborhood. One of my concerns about what Mr. Anderson was talking about was planting non-native species. We need native species. We need to be Utah strong. Our plants are strong here. They can survive drought. I know he's very concerned about water. You know what I mean? Another thing is honey locusts can get 50 feet tall. They get quite large and do a lot of damage to sidewalks and stuff like that. So I'd ask all of you just to take into concern, the speeding problem. We're a very car-dependent neighborhood. All the grocery stores are over a mile away unless you have a membership to Sam's Club, which not everyone wants to do, right? So we are a very car-dependent neighborhood. We could use great native plants instead of random Japanese lilacs, even though they're beautiful. Utah has plenty of beautiful plants to choose from. So I would urge you guys to consider that. And mainly, I'm worried about cars for the safety of my daughter. That's honestly what it is. So I would just urge you maybe to consider more green space, less housing, because it would potentially put less cars in there. And in our neighborhood, we have a lot of multi-generational homes, as the economic, it is right now, which adds more cars, unfortunately. So I would just like you to take all of that into consideration. And thank you so much for listening and doing this for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jake DeBrusque. I'm at 6734 South, 300 East, so I'm one of the houses in the middle of the U. So we have a lot of concerns, but I'll try and just voice. We were a little late, I apologize for that, so if any of this was covered and I missed it, I'm sorry. But one off the bat is the initial construction, because we're going to be essentially surrounded by all of the construction. So the dust, sound, working hours, we don't currently have a fence that's the full length of our driveway. So that initial driveway when you're coming down 300 on the left is half open. So if they're doing any type of water, dust, cement, it's all going to roll into our driveway unless it's planned ahead and blocked. So that's going to create a huge mess on our vehicles. We have a lot of vehicles that take work to maintain naturally, so to add on top of that could be a huge cost for us, along with our property, our driveway, our plants. I know cement and dust can create issues with plant growth and all that stuff, and so if they're not doing their proper portion, it's going to affect our property largely. So along with that, the backside of our garage, we have a large garage, and it's a cement wall, and from what it looked like on the plans, their backyard is going to be against at the back of our garage. So I don't know if there's a plan to put fences there, trees there, something that they can't cause, I don't know who's going to live there. I don't know how they're going to do construction, but I wouldn't want them to cause any type of damage to our garage. It also might be kind of strange to just put a house abutting a, 20-foot tall cement wall is a little strange. So I don't know what the plan is on that corner. I think that was the majority of it. I'm trying to think. Was there any of that discussed earlier with the dust mitigation or water, any of that?
We have talked a bit about water on site,
Okay.
and ways to mitigate that. But also, we talked about concrete washout
Okay,
was also
okay.
mentioned.
Okay.
So some site concerns. Did
Okay.
I miss anything?
No, that's all we've covered so far.
Okay,
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Ethan Green, and I live on 6790 South, and not too far from 3rd East. So we look over at the set of 4 buildings on the up, just adjacent to these. Generally, I would say that I kind of feel agnostic about this. However, in discussion with some neighbors as well as others, I bring just mainly questions. Largely, I know that a number of folks have expressed concerns about traffic. And so I'm just kind of curious if there is a traffic impact study and if that is available for review. And along with that, kind of along with the traffic capacity concerns along 6790 and somewhat on 3rd East, are there any plans to improve the signal at State Street? Given that oftentimes the signal doesn't serve enough capacity. So potentially at a minimum 2 lanes outgoing, left and through and a right turn. If you have somebody sitting to make a left turn, then all of the right turn traffic is going to be backed up and delayed. And so, as others have said, speed along 6790 is also a concern. And so, are there any plans for speed management? Something like speed bumps or speed humps is not enough. Are there considerations for bulb outs or other methods like road narrowing in order to mitigate? And so, those are my main concerns. I think this is similar I think a traffic impact study would also account for maybe some of the concerns along Acoma Road or some of the other ways to get over to 7th East. And so from my understanding and what I've been able to look into, those are, hopefully, I think that buttons up in my mind, like what are the main concerns, the traffic capacity and the speed. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Anything you just have to say? Yeah? All right.
Hello, my name is Zach Horton. I live on 6790. I'm right at the southern corner where the concrete washout is proposed. And I did leave a comment that had some of my concern about that. I have dogs, I have a cat, I have a plum tree, and I like to plant some vegetables in portable areas in the backyard, things that I can enjoy through the summer and pack away for the winter. And I have a lot of concerns about the chemicals, not only that are inherently there with the concrete washout, but also the chemicals that are needed to neutralize the slurry and the water that's part of that. I'm scared that it's toxic, that I won't be able to let my pets in the backyard. I won't be able to grow any food there, and I'm concerned about even being outside enjoying my backyard for the however many years this development will take. Overall, I'm mostly in favor of it. The RV park was probably the best backyard neighbor I could ever ask for. They're very quiet. But the developer has shown there's going to be some trees back there. I think that's nice, very considerate, so I appreciate that. My mother's here with me. She's in the unit next to me. And I don't know if, is your neighbor on the other side here? Or, I know that the other neighbor has small children and animals, and their property extends a lot further back, so they'll have a lot more exposure to that. So I'm sure that they would also have a concern about that. I'm curious, is this a sealed container? What is the process like for emptying that out? Do we have access to was it SWIFT inspections that are done weekly? I'd like to be able to see that. And if it is a sealed container, is there filtration for the exhaust gases that would inevitably be coming out of there? And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it's SWIP, it's SWPPP. Okay. And there's lots of regulations online, you can search about it. It's not a very unregulated part of construction. So just to set your mind at ease, I hope. SWIP is a big deal. Any others? Is there a motion?
Well, can we have the developer maybe come up and respond to some of the comments and see if he has any?
I think you got one more that I was thinking.
Do we have another comment? Come on up.
Yeah. While it's open.
Yeah, no, my name's Katie Piscopo. I'm at 6734 South. So again, right in the middle of all of this. So I guess if I could have, my main concern is that all of this is with very limited backyard on these units. That's going to be completely adjacent to my backyard and driveway. So I guess I would just like to know, I think they mentioned putting trees up, and that would be great. But how many feet do we really have between our back fence and where these units start? Because it doesn't, from the images that I saw, it does not look like that's very much space at all, and that's going to feel very cramped very fast. And then the other concern I have is this is a lot of units, so it feels like they're really packing things in. So I just didn't know if there was any negotiation maybe, which would also, I feel like, address a lot of the other concerns with traffic and just flow through this area, like having this many units in one small area. I think they're really trying to pack things in, and it can create some problems. So I guess, yeah, if I could know how many feet between our backyard and where these complexes will start would be helpful.
Thank you. Jonathan, do you have that setback number?
Is this for?
Between units. So it's from a side lot to a structure, I believe?
Yeah, so minimum
rear yard
setbacks.
Yeah, rear yard, okay.
Yeah, so the minimum in the zone is 15. So the 8 units that are adjacent to the road are all just over 15 feet. The ones that are behind, so west of the 2 properties in the middle, those are closer to actually 30 feet. So they're well beyond the minimum.
Good questions. When it impacts you individually, it's important to ask.
Is that the distance from property line to building structure, or from property line to?
So there are different regulations. Different parts of the property have different amounts, setbacks, backlots, all that sort of thing. If you want to ask some questions, you can come back up. But it is a public hearing, so we have to keep everything on the record. That's why I'm being a little bit finicky. Yeah.
I'll just repeat the question. So for setbacks are typically from the structure to the property line, which in this instance, it's from the overall parcel that's going to be common area to then the building, and that's exceeds the minimum.
Okay, I was just here for that because I wanted to know that exact number because it's on the entire length of our driveway and then the entire backyard, so we're getting hit on both sides. So you're saying that's 30 feet from our property line to the beginning of the structure? I just want to make sure I'm understanding
The
that.
west towards the back, yes. The
Okay.
ones that'll be, I'm guessing you're the south property.
Yes,
So that's 15, they're just over 15
just over
from
15.
the property.
Okay, and what is the separation between, like, our fence in the back of our garage and their backyard? Is that trees, bushes, a second fence,
The plans propose a fence,
a fence?
and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but the plan note calls a 6-foot vinyl fence.
6 foot? Okay,
It's wrapping the entire property.
okay, awesome, thank you.
And most of these questions have already been answered, but I do have one question. Having lived next to
Can you state your name, please?
Tom Pettinger, and I live in Twin Bridges Lane,
Thank you.
so my property directly faces, south, so I'd be facing their road going in. And I have lived next to a development that was being built, and having had to live through the noise, are there bylaws that say you can't start before this time and you have to end at this time?
For construction?
And what are those?
Yeah.
7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is when the noise ordinance is not in effect. So 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. they can't be operating.
And that's it, there's no way of shortening that. I mean, that's a long time to be listening to bulldozers and excavators and whatever else we're gonna have in there. And mine was, they started at 7 and they ended when the sun went down. And that's just a long time to be living within 20 feet of something. So if they could address that. My second one has to do with the fence. So it says they're gonna put in a fence, which is a 6-foot fence. So all along the back of Twin Bridges is a 6-foot vinyl fence, which is already, right behind mine, has been damaged by a piece getting thrown off of not a piece of equipment that went through that fence, and then through the fence into my yard and to my house. So I'm concerned about just having 2 vinyl fences. Is that what it's gonna be? Is it gonna be a vinyl fence and then another vinyl fence right next to it? Is that what we're looking at? Or do they just leave the one vinyl fence we have, and who's gonna fix the damage? Because we know what's gonna happen. And that's all my questions. And I will get the parking is gonna be an issue, as always. And 30 East parking, I think nobody's mentioned it, but there's an elementary school there, and there are kids that walk down that street all the time. My concern would be safety. We keep adding more and more and more development, and there's that parcel that's just to our east. It will be developed, and it'll be the same problem all over again. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Eric Olson. I'm on 6734, so again, right in the middle of all this. It just seems like a lot of units to me. Again, traffic, go back to that. And I don't know how many people with cars are gonna be living there, but if there's 27 units, there's probably gonna be over 60 plus cars, and I don't see enough space for cars. So I'm all in favor of downsizing the proposed units. Again, it just seems very crammed, and I think there should be more green space. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Cameron Dadgary. We live just across over by the school, so we're not nearly as close as everybody else has been. But we do have a 2-year-old, and we like to walk that street all the time we go down there. It's been brought up 100 times, but the parking and the traffic are our main concern. One of the big things was when 7200 and 30s, when that got developed, there was concern about parking and traffic. We've been in the neighborhood for many years, and we were assured that every unit had enough parking for each car to be in that, in the area. but the garages become storage units and people will park on the street. And people aren't always the most cognizant of the speed going down the street on 3rd East and then the adjacent streets. So our main concern is the safety of the kids that are there, both the safety of the kids that are already there, but also moving into townhomes. In these townhomes, I suspect there are going to be an influx of children as well, which is great, and especially where they're trying to have more green space. We don't really have a lot, so they're going to have to walk to the school. And again, the traffic on 3rd East is going to be a problem for the people that are there, but also the people that are going to live there. So I'm also all for development, like people need places to live, but downsizing maybe the number of units to a more manageable amount and creating enough green space so that everybody's not having to put their safety at risk trying to always get to the school and things like that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after this, we're not going to do more repeats.
Okay, yeah, you're fine.
We're getting on in time. So.
You're good. Just want to bring this up with the whole 15-foot thing. After I heard that, there's a lot more concern coming up here. So just to picture that, they have 15 feet and a 20-foot cement wall, and they have to build an entire home there without doing any damage or any issues with our property wall.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you are in one of the homes that will be surrounded.
Yes.
The setback in those instances was 30 feet for most of it.
He said 30 feet on the side, I think.
So it'd be on the west end, they're more than the minimum, because, I mean, the trail runs, and with the way the parcel is, there's some essentially dead space back there that makes it larger, but it's on the south end that they're at just over 15, if you're looking at the plan.
Yeah, so I think on page 23, it looks to be significantly more than 15 feet.
That's
Okay.
for the rear, yeah.
Correct.
Maybe I wasn't looking at it right, but against the back of the property was where the concern is, so I'm just wondering how I'll be able to go and inspect the back of our garage frequently to make sure that there's no damage, so I can ensure that it doesn't come up at a later time when it's too late to fix it.
Does the garage go direct, is it on your property line? Does it go all the
It
way
goes
to your
direct,
property?
from what I know, it goes directly to the edge of the property
Okay.
line. It's extended as far as it can go, and it's.
Yeah, so you don't have any setback there at all? It
No,
goes
there's
directly
no
to your
setback, and
property
it's very big garage. So there's a lot of space there. That, and if there's consideration, just like everybody else said, I think there's a lot of units going in there. I think making that smaller would solve a lot of problems. But also a taller fence going along those properties would be significant increase, I think, in helping prevent damage from the back of that little horseshoe we have on our property. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion.
Do we want to have the developer come up and answer some of those questions now or later?
We can close the public hearing and then have him address any issues. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Would you like to come forward and address any of those concerns from public comment?
And Adam Anderson with Anderson Development. I don't know, I think anytime we see change, I mean, this is my profession, chosen profession after being in the Army for 30 years. And so I understand this is challenging. It really is. It's a big change to go from its current use to a development like this. I will say at my heart, when I do these projects, I have a son that's also in the Army that just got out, and finding an affordable house in this county is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. It is my driving passion to get housing prices down. And I could go in there and put 10,000 square foot units at $1.2 million, but that is not going to do, where do we stop that? We can't continue to do that. That doesn't make sense. I can't see urban sprawl. It won't work. It's unsustainable. And so when we look at these projects, we do the best we can to say, how can we get a family in here? Or how can we get a couple in here? Or how can we provide housing that would be a benefit as best as it can be for a community? Ideally, I'd love to do 1 acre lots that are just beautiful, sprawling horse properties, and it looks gorgeous on any postcard. The reality is I can't do that. and this property wouldn't support that. And 1.2 million is exactly what I'd have to charge to get a 10,000 square foot lot to fit on this property, and it won't work. And so when we laid this out, we tried to do the best we can to say, how can we make this inclusive? And that's why we took the property line, the fences out of this. Made the lots less of a consideration, made the homes the center and the community the center. And that's why we wrapped the homes with the trails. Because it'd be nice to see the kids out there playing with each other and not, confined in a backyard somewhere where they can't see each other. Now they will have some private space to some degree. And parking is a concern. And that's why we chose, rather than going to the 35-foot street, we went with 41. I could have probably got more units if we would have got really tight and asked for a variance on increased density. The reality is it didn't make sense for us, because I know the reality, and I think you all know the reality too, is I can park it and say we got 108 parking off-street, but the reality is, you're right, someone's going to put something in the side of the garage and not use both sides for parking, and someone's going to park an extra car out in the driveway, and that's going to force additional parking onto the street. So I've already anticipated that happening, and that's why we went to the 41-foot right-of-way. That made better sense to allow for some level of parking. I can't park the whole world there, and we shouldn't anticipate doing that. And at some point, there might be some restrictions that would have to come into play, and just say, hey, you can only have so many cars on here, right? If I have my hobby of having 30 cars, it's just not going to work on this site. So I think we did the best we could to make this work and balance it. For open space, we have 50% open space. We have 18% active open space. That's over the minimum requirements. We've overparked it. We've done everything we could to not only take the standard, but exceed that standard. We've done that on the lid procedures. We've done that on parking. We've done that, and we haven't asked for a density bonus. And so I think we've done the best we can to make this site be a good asset for the community and good homes for future families that want to move into the community. And I think that's going to do that. I really do. And so I recognize that these are all concerns, and I promise we've spent months and months and months and months and months and working hard with the staff, and how do we work through some of these issues and challenges. And so we've always had that community emphasis in mind to say, how do we make the most out of this site? And when you open any site and say, I'm going to dedicate 50% open space, that's just on the mindset. You say, 1 out of every acre I'm going to dedicate as open space. That's pretty restrictive to some degree, but in the end, I think it makes a better community. And so your ordinances are doing that. It inevitably forced me as a developer to say, how can I create open space but have good homes still? And so that we had to get real creative on that. And honestly, having the green space and open space and interconnectivity we do on this small, 3 acres is not a big site. And to make that all fit in there in addition to the homes it was a challenge. But I think it worked out well, and I appreciate all the collaboration to get to this point. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of people that we've employed to try to get to this point as far as partnering with other experts, et cetera. Now, the traffic study, we did not do a traffic study. We weren't asked to do one. We will say that since we didn't do a density increase, we suggested that the duplex overlay might have considered that as a consideration with the density already in place. So I can't speak to the traffic study since we weren't asked to do one, but I will say we did contemplate parking quite significantly. We did a light overlay to make sure that all the light was implemented correctly on all 4 corners so it's safe at night. Most of the walking, we tried to push around the exterior. That's where we amenitized a little bit heavier along the back side and along the sides. So that might encourage more pedestrian walking along the back rather than along the street side. I know that doesn't help a lot with the off-site stuff, but where I can control and push more pedestrian activity and more parking on-site, it has less impact off-site. And I guess that's kind of the direction I was hoping to make a mention towards. So anyway.
Will your CCNRs allow for street parking?
Can you speak to that, Sean?
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Sean Poor with Brighton Homes. We're partnering with them to bring this community to life. We generally put restrictions in the CCNRs to prevent parking, and that's the best enforcement mechanism we have in a for sale community is the CCNRs, and so it does rely in the long term on the residents of the community, but we hope that they have the same goals that we do here of having a good community long-term that's livable and safe, so.
Well, the wider street doesn't really do us any good if we can't park on it.
Well, and I'm not necessarily saying it'll be restricted to be parked on it. If it's wide enough to allow for parking on it, then I don't think we would have any reason to restrict parking on it. If it becomes a safety issue for fire or something, and maybe both sides of the street are a problem with parking, then we'd step in at that point. But if it's wide enough to accept it in the way that they've designed it, we would plan on allowing the way that it was designed to maximize the on-site parking. Same goal that we have, that Anderson does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question that if your construction crew damages the neighboring properties and the neighboring fences, whose covers that? I would assume you do because you're the ones who damaged it, so you would fix it.
Yeah, whoever damages the fence or structure, it's them or their insurance that would cover the damage.
Just like if our neighbors damage our stuff, then their insurance covers it or whatever.
And given that we're putting these up for sale, I mean, if we accidentally make huge holes in the fence to the north, it's not going to help our sales if we're putting out a product that looks like that. So, but no, it's we would be responsible for fixing any damage to neighboring properties that we cause.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments over here from legal?
Absolutely. So this is an administrative decision, so it's at the city, the planning commission to make the decision. If it meets the requirements of the code, you have to authorize it. If it doesn't meet the requirements of the code, but it can meet the requirements of the code with mitigating, then you can authorize it with reasonable conditions. And then if it doesn't and cannot meet the requirements of the code, then you can deny it.
Thank you. Initial thoughts?
Parking.
Parking, yes.
It's always an issue.
It always is. I appreciate 2-car garages and reasonably long driveways. That is something, but at Thanksgiving, if half the residents hosted, that could become very problematic.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we didn't hear was a lot of concerns about parking. It was about speed and traffic control though too. So there was some parking concerns, but.
And a lot of street concerns on adjacent streets.
Yeah.
I think some residents, clearly a passionate and engaged group around this property. That's fantastic. We like to see engagement like that. That's amazing. And some of you have gone through the steps to look into speed mitigation. And bravo, continue that. It's not something we can necessarily change here tonight, but definitely bring awareness and education about how to do that. I think Vendelin had the resource to reach out. The city website has a lot of resources to complain about that, but rightly so.
Yeah. And is the traffic study that came before this committee, that's public?
They didn't do one.
They didn't do it.
Not for this, but for Midvale as a whole.
Sure, all types of general plans are public. The transportation master plan,
Yes.
if you think about that, that's a public document. And there are some data, that would also pertain to this area of the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there was a
Transportation master plan.
transportation master plan that was brought before us, and we kind of reviewed it. That is available to do research. I learned a lot about the intersections near my house on 7th East, and they need it. So it was true in my eyes what their conclusions were.
Yeah.
I think it needs offsite, or parking stalls.
Accommodation for guest parking.
I've not been to one subdivision that A, doesn't have it, and B, they're not all full.
Yeah, usually full all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
Garages.
36 units in mine, and we have very limited, but we have outside parking. We have underground, and we have outside parking. I mean, 36 units isn't a lot. And I think, and I'm looking at theirs going 2 cars. I mean, you're talking 60 cars in there, in that place. That's if you've got 2 in a garage.
That's rarely gonna happen.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
Yeah, I'd like to see some parking.
WeWork parking. The other thing that Jonathan mentioned that we haven't really talked about was the facade requirements.
Yeah.
Front facing and the side lots. They're compliant on the front, like, yeah, 83%. But on the sides, where we were talking about the trees, maybe distracting from the fact that there's not enough masonry on that side.
Or too much masonry?
Well,
No.
no.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So when it comes to this, I would prefer that what's in the code be met. I feel like extending the masonry or building up an exterior wainscoting or a base would fulfill that requirement and add a lot of value and interest to just a blank facade, which I think was mentioned by some.
You can see a lot of the side yards.
Yeah.
About 30% are visible.
Right. So I think maybe reallocating the trees to the facades would fit the requirement for the city.
Well, trees are gonna take a while to.
Yeah. And in the winter, yeah, they're covering it up 50% of the time. So that's my other concern, is that it's not fully compliant as presented. But we could definitely make that a part of a motion if we were to approve it with the stipulation that they meet the requirement. But we also have concerns about parking, so.
Well, I think with the parking, I don't know if you can necessarily park on both sides of the street, but I think it has plenty of room to park on one side of the street. And I think to put a restriction in the covenant's restrictions that they can't park on the road they've tried to address parking, and then by addressing parking, they've limited no parking. And that seems ridiculous to me. Why are you even building a road that's wider if you're not going to allow people to park on it? So I think you need to.
Sorry, I think I might not have been very clear on what I was saying. We do not intend to restrict parking from the street. You were asking if we could restrict parking if there was a problem in the CCNRs, then yes, we could. But I was just saying if there was cars that are blocking driveways or cars on both sides of the street that are causing problems where a fire truck couldn't get down. I'm not saying we're planning on restricting parking on the street by any means, so I want to clarify that we plan on using the street.
So I'm not too concerned about parking.
Well, if you look at street
necessarily.
parking, there's very few spots you could park on the street and not affect the driveway across the street. I mean, there's hardly
There's
there's
those
actually
two,
no spots.
Yeah, the extreme north and the extreme
yeah,
south.
the north and south street are the only place you could really park.
So street parking is,
10, 12 cars.
yeah. Well, I don't even think you're gonna get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be pretty
Yeah, I see your
upset coming out
point.
of my driveway and there was a car parked. So, it was just.
Well, and if the snow plows come,
Okay.
I don't know,
Is this the other
parking's a
one?
big one for me.
Wasn't there another one?
No, there's one
Either after green space or there. That would fix things.
but it does meet the parking requirements for the code. I will say that.
yeah. And
It exceeds the parking requirements.
And the fire code ingress as well.
Yes. So it does comply with the code as it is set out.
Our issue's gonna be the compliance here.
So the only thing that wasn't compliant was the facade and the percentage of masonry.
And a bush isn't gonna help that, so.
I don't think a decidual tree will do that, no. However made pretty it will be,
Eventually.
yes.
Sorry, I'll just clarify one thing. You said it met the code requirements for parking, but the code does specify that you set the parking.
Right.
So we've given you the standards for what normally happens in
Okay, I
a
guess
single
that's-
family. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that you
Thank you.
do hold the power for parking requirements.
Thank you for that. I think we were operating on what we typically see for parking in the code.
Yeah, I think it needs parking
You think it additional?
for 100%.
Well, generally, the ones we've seen always have off-site parking. You know, even 3 or 4 stalls per however many the guests,
And it's a different
does
type
make
of
a
development as well.
It is.
The ones that we're remembering
Yes.
are larger mixed-use developments or larger.
I will say in larger multifamily developments, so a little bit denser than this, the code will typically require a quarter parking space per unit. So, a stall for every 4 units, which might be a little bit overkill. I think for this project at 27 units, it would be just under 7 stalls. So, just so you're aware.
Thank you.
So speaking of parking, do we think 7 reasonably fit on the extreme north and extreme south on those streets with 41?
I don't think 7's
Adequate.
7's excessive. What do you think?
I think we have 7 in ours.
See, I think they could fit 7 cars to meet that along those north and south.
Yeah.
And that's not including if you have a 16-year-old or older kid per family, that's adding an additional car.
Yep.
I don't know.
But I think my concern with parking and stuff like that is, we talk about this project, but my neighbors park a lot of cars. And I would like them not to park on the street. But that's kind of the reality I think all of us face is people sometimes like their vehicles and multiple vehicles, and sometimes the city has to get involved and tell them to move their cars and things like that, and so it's just always kind of a challenge, I think, no
Well, their
matter where you go.
CCNRs would address.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally could say in their CCNRs,
Yeah,
snow days, you're not allowed to park
yeah,
on the
yeah.
street.
Yeah.
Or, it's never gonna happen. We know how that
Yeah.
works right
Yeah.
here in Midvale.
Well, we're not supposed to do that on public streets too, and
Right.
everybody does, so,
I mean, they do have some control in the CCNRs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a comment? Yeah.
Did you raise your hand like you were in school?
He did.
yes.
Several times.
I waited to be called on. Adam Anderson again. Maybe a thought, because like back and forth on the parking, where do we end up on a good number? You're right. We don't want to restrict parking where we can park, and that works good for the residents. But some people take advantage of stuff, and that's where the beauty of the CCNR could come in. We could permit parking. We could get pretty creative on restricting parking for those people that violate it. If they have 27 cars, that's not going to work. They're going to have to find another solution, and we can mandate that through CCNRs and permitting, et cetera. So the fact that we're out on a private street and we can do stuff that you might not be able to get away with on the city side because it's not public, we can mandate that. You're going to have a parking permit if you're going to park on the street. We can get real creative, I guess is what I'm saying. We don't need to turn half of it into a parking lot to make it work. Just a thought.
So I think generally the concern with parking is it overflowing onto the city streets. And I think that this commission has seen that in the past as well.
On every project, parking is an issue.
It is.
We're also limited at this stage too, we're not able to control that regulation if it's needed. So if it's approved, it's outside of our control to be able to mandate that. So that's a continuing concern. Not to say that you wouldn't go back on what you're saying tonight. I'm not saying that, but it is a perspective that we have to keep in mind.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a comment, and maybe the city attorney can look at this while you discuss a little more. I mean, the ordinance says a couple of things about parking. Within the table, in the parking section, it talks about master plan developments, and it says, as determined by the planning commission, based on the proposed uses and the potential for shared parking. Shared parking usually means a reduction. If you then go into the master plan development section, also talks about parking, but in the context of reducing. So I just wanted to bring that out a little bit, because as has been stated, single-family homes have, let me restart. If you look at a conventional single-family home subdivision, let's say a detached home, our parking requirement in our code is 2 spaces. In this development, they are providing 4, 2 in the garage and 2 on the driveway. So just keep that in mind, and maybe the city attorney can double check if there's a misinterpretation here, but it does appear that the ordinance doesn't really give you necessarily a blank check to say, oh, we want this and this. There's a little more to it.
Yeah.
And if you need to, we can even put the language on the screen.
Yeah.
And it's number 6 in the incentives, so it is on the screen. It's kind of hard to read, but there is and that's referring to the reduction in parking that Vendeline was talking about.
Yeah. I actually think the parking could be satisfactory, given the street, the 4 spots.
I'm with you. I think the parking I think they've taken that well into consideration, and,
And residents will take liberties, like, no matter what we decide here.
yeah.
It'll be up to the CCNRs to
The-
take care of
the
their,
HOA
not
that
for
has
us.
to
The
enforce.
HOA and the CCNRs, they can address that.
Yeah.
That's not something we,
don't have control over that.
no,
Yeah.
that's right.
And
The
and
biggest concern we have is what it looks like right
Yeah.
now. It's not meeting the requirement for what it's looking like. We need to address that.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is do we, I think his assessment was that he shifted some of that to the front, because I think that he demonstrated, he thought that was more valuable. Does this group agree or not? I think that's a question. And I don't think people need to answer, but.
Well, I think, the sides, how many feet are in between the buildings?
6 feet.
6 feet.
12 feet.
So,
So it's 6 per?
Yeah, 6 per.
Okay.
it's 12.
That's
12
even
feet
better.
total.
12 feet between the 2 buildings? The twin.
Yeah, because
Okay.
So you'll be able to see farther down.
But I just,
And you can see the side of lot 1, 5.
I think along 3rd East, that was a concern to me, those side ones, because that's going to be a public fronted street. But the other sides I'm not too concerned about, because especially with the trees that they're planting and stuff like that, I'm not concerned. But I think the ones on 3rd East, I do have some concerns of making that look a little bit more inviting rather than boring. But I
We
think,
either stick with this and what it is.
Correct, we can't change it.
That's right. And I think that's what it is. Nice that we're gonna plant some trees. That does not help.
We could have them fulfill the requirement. We could approve it tonight and just have the stipulation that it meet the requirement, rather than making an exception. I don't think this is exception worthy.
Yeah.
I don't either. Because remember, we always get into the mud when we have exceptions to things.
And if I may, because they are asking for a variance, one of the things that the planning commission may consider as an option is granting it for the majority of the structures. But for the structures that have been identified as either being out onto 3rd East or to the adjacent neighborhood to the north, of requiring on those particular structures where those facades front, to require them to either meet this or if they're in agreement to exceed it in order to receive the variance on all the other structures.
Hey, can you state your name?
Garrett Wilcox, reluctantly the city attorney.
See, I like that better.
Yeah, I do too.
I think that's
Yeah.
a much better solution rather than denying it, or I think to help mitigate some of it. But I just think in between the homes,
Right.
I'm not going to go outside my house and go look. I have 8 feet on the side of my house, and I mow it, and that's the only time I see the side of my house. And so, I'm not concerned about that so much, but I can see.
So how would we phrase this? With views off of the property, or?
You'd have,
Yeah,
I think we'd have to list
Pull
this.
Pull up the map and you can see that everywhere you look, you're gonna be able to see the sides. All the houses are.
Well,
So I don't know, is that,
1, 5, 11, 15, 16, debatably 19 and 18.
See, and to me, I'm more concerned about 1 and 15. Those sides facing Third East, I think it
But
would
if
be
you
more
live right
inviting
there-
to the neighborhood.
but if you live right there, and you're looking, and that's what you're looking out your kitchen window at that's not nice.
So one suggestion to simplify it may be if you want to identify the corner lots. So
Right.
the facade, so for the corner lots, it would be whoever has the pointer, thank you, Johnny. So you'd be identifying the out-facing facades of each of the corner lots, which would then affect the 4 interior properties, and it would be, those 4 would need enhanced facades in order to get the reduction on the others.
Yeah, I think that works for me.
I think that meets my,
Yeah, I agree that even if they're interior, if they're on the corner, that enhancement makes sense.
yeah.
I also wanted to point out that around the perimeter, most of these side elevations, there's a 6-foot fence that's going to be adjacent to it, hiding. So if we put like a wainscot of stone on the bottom, I don't know that anyone would see it.
So yeah, you spend the money to make it look really pretty that no one sees it.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons we put that hardy siding more up on the higher end, higher to the top of the building rather than the bottom, because you don't typically see the bottom of the building.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider there is if they put up a fence, that's even less of the current 23% that would be visible. So it'd be essentially 0 visible behind the fence in its current state.
Yeah.
Under that same argument.
Yeah. I like the idea of the 4 units on the side.
That's great, you make the motion, then you word that.
Yeah. But then again, when they have the fence there and stuff like that, I don't know if it, thinking of the fence.
But a fence is not forever.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Just make it the whole project.
Well, I had my choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the corner lots is a reasonable compromise for the city requirements, but also the site requirements given the design plans. I am aware that fences do not last forever, so that's why I'm a little bit more adamant that they exist on some of the most forward-facing facades.
Yeah. I can live with that. The 4 units that would make the whole project, I think, a little bit more inviting rather than, because that would be the most public-facing units.
Make the motion.
Yeah, you get to make the motion.
Oh, where's the motion?
You might amend it pretty significantly.
Yeah, you'll have to amend it.
Well, I'll do my best. Attorney, help me out if I need. Yeah. I move that we approve the small-scale master plan for a 27-unit townhome project located at 6766 South, 300 East in the SF1 DO zone with the findings noted in the staff report, and grant a reduction to MMC 17-7-1.9C4 and grant the incentives of MMC 17.7.19 D, 3, and 4, with the exceptions that units 1, 15, 5, and 11 meet the current code for the side of the home.
Yeah.
Does that work? Okay.
I'll second that motion.
I mean, the only comment I would have is to clarify if you, the way you just said it would be both sides. If you want to clarify to just the outside facing
Just the
portion.
outside facing of Unit 5, because there's only one side wall on Unit 5. And same with 11 and 15, because the other unit's a different unit. So I think it's just the sides of 1, 5, 11, and 15 meet the requirements.
And there was a second, Ken?
I'll second it.
Okay, can we get a roll call vote?
Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Snow,
I'm gonna go now.
Commissioner Lidkey,
Yes.
Commissioner Tippett.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
Can I say I really appreciate the community's involvement in this? It's
Very
been
much.
nice to have really great comments and questions brought to us. I appreciate that.
And is there any way we can request the city to look into the traffic issues that are in that neighborhood on the cross streets?
I think there are a couple of things we can do. Everyone in the neighborhood who was interested in that, and it seemed there were different roads, streets that were mentioned, has the option to, approach the traffic control committee. The point of contact is the city engineer on that.
Okay.
The other option is to work with a council member in your district. In general, this is a residential neighborhood. The traffic control committee would probably be the realistic first step if it's about, elements of traffic calming, whatever they may be.
So the public has a little bit of homework. You need to contact your city council rep and contact engineering and ask for some traffic studies being done on all those roads. And then, Vendolin, your job is to let engineering know that there's going to be something coming his way.
Sure.
Okay.
So thank you on those comments. Also, just as a point of education, every time we have a planning and zoning meeting, it is recorded and on YouTube Live. So in the future, if you just want to know what we're doing, what's coming up in Midvale, that's a great resource to see the projects that are coming down the pipeline. So I would encourage you to go there, trying to get our views up and meet city council. Just saying. That was a joke. We usually win.
Find out who your city councilman is.
Yep.
Talk to him about your concerns with how fast everybody's going. Find out. That's the best thing you guys can do. Get their ear and talk to them.
All right, next up on the agenda, we have Anderson Development LLC requests preliminary subdivision approval of a 27-unit townhome development located at 6766 South, 300 East in the single-family residential duplex overlay SF1DO zone. Jonathan is presenting.
Thanks, Chair Erickson. So this is preliminary subdivision for the same project that you just approved. So this is an administrative process which would allow for individual ownership of all of the 27 units. So beyond that, it meets Title 16 for preliminary subdivisions. Obviously, it still has to go through the final process, which is approved by staff. And here's a copy of the plat, pages 1 and 2. There is obviously the footprint lots that they'll own, as well as the limited common is associated typically with properties with HOAs and the such. So if you have any questions for me, I'll hear them.
I don't have any. Thank you. So the applicant is still here. This is just specifically on subdividing for individual ownership. Did you have any comments, or did you want to present it? Yeah?
Yeah.
I think we understand. Okay. All right, we'll open this up for public hearing. there's anyone that would like to comment on the topic at hand.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I mean, I think this is exactly what Midvale wants, is being able to own your own property.
I appreciate that it's a for sale product rather than just an investment
Right.
product.
Plus, you can put that in your CC&Rs. It's in ours, that there's only a certain percentage that you can rent it. So there is that option, which is really great.
Which would be really nice.
Remember that in your
Ownership
CC&Rs.
rather than rental.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the preliminary subdivision for 27 units located at 6766 South, 300 East in the SF1 DO zone, with findings included in the staff report.
I'll second it.
Can we get a roll call vote?
Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Snow,
Yes.
Commissioner Lidke,
Yes.
Commissioner Tippett.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And not last up, but the fourth on the agenda, Midvale City initiated request to amend section 17-7-17 of the Midvale City Municipal Code entitled Transit-Oriented Development Overlay Zone, TODO, and section 17-2-4 to clarify the definition of the term development. These changes align the zone with state code and clarify when certain activities are not considered development. Vandalin is presenting.
You're giving Jonathan a break?
Wondering how Elizabeth got off the hook.
Yeah.
He's definitely deserved it. You saw the smile on his face, so we want to keep everyone happy.
We'll see.
So this amendment has been in the works for quite a while. There were several people who worked on this. I mean, pretty much all the staff you see here. And there's a good reason for this. The city has, as a matter of implementing the general plan and as a matter of good public policy, the city, is really interested in redevelopment. As you can see in front of our door here on Main Street, there's a lot of activity, but there are also other areas in the city that are in need of redevelopment and in need of investment. And for that reason, the city has looked at different tools that there are to bring investment into Midvale. And one of these tools is related to this zone map amendment, not zone map amendment, the Cortex amendment. And as you see on the screen, it's called the HTRZ, and in the staff report, there's just a little more background. And that stands for Housing Transit Redevelopment Zone. And there are the state law, and this is quite lengthy. Just so that you get an impression why we are considering and bringing this amendment to you. There's I don't know how many pages in the state law. This is a very minimalist boiled down version. But what the state law envisions with these zones is a tax increment finance mechanism. But in order to be able to make use of that as a city, the zoning and then the projects that may emanate from that have to hit certain criteria. For example, there's an affordability criterion, and it's graduated, as you can see here. Then the next criterion is that it does require residential uses. So part of the thrust of this tool that the legislature has created is to, bring more housing into cities, and especially into locations that, will hopefully enable people to not have as many cars as you would expect the average household to have right now. And so this is really restricted to commuter rail. So that would be front-runner stops, light rails, that would be all track stops, and also bus rapid transit, of which we don't have that much yet. There's only a little bit. There's a line that's currently sort of at the beginning of construction. It's called the Midvale connector. Doesn't unfortunately touch Midvale, but it goes through Murray into West Valley, from what I remember. So that's the background on this. Another criterion that the legislature has put into this is a density minimum. It says here it's the average, but it's the average on acreage that's dedicated to residential use. And you'll see that in the ordinance that we are proposing to really go higher than this if needed. That makes it easier in the future, once something like this goes off the ground, to have some flexibility. And of course, if there's a possibility for higher densities, it will be easier for a developer to make a project work. This is a big one that really shifted things in the ordinance, the requirement for mixed-use development. And there's also a requirement for mixing dwelling unit sizes. And that one you will not see in the ordinance, but the city has other means to bring that about. And so that's really what the background is on this ordinance. And if you remember the station area plans, this is an excerpt from the station area plan for the Fort Union track station. This is what could develop. The orange areas that are labeled areas of stability would not be part of a potential HTRZ, but everything else that you see there. And the focus, of course, is the track station. So now to the more nitty-gritty, what actually changed in the ordinance. There were sections that were merged and modified. We also tried to give this more a slant of walkable development. So drive-throughs, the original zone has quite a few uses that allow drive-throughs, so that was struck. We added an incentive mechanism and maps, and these maps show areas that depict where mixed use is a requirement. So the developer can't get around it. If you're outside of one of those mapped areas, if you provide mixed use, you get an incentive, which would mean higher density.
So on the drive-throughs, that means like the mixed-use portion, they could have like a coffee shop where you could drive up and get your coffee. Is that
no? That means they can't.
Oh, they can. Okay, so that's been struck, so they can't have that. Okay.
Yeah, you can have.
Yeah, walk up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
We would love coffee shops.
But you have to go in and order.
Yeah, you have to walk.
Okay. Yeah, the drive-through was struck, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So right now, it's listed that they can have a drive-through.
Yes, the current zone does. So if you compare, I mean, this is I mean, it almost reaches the level of a rewrite. I mean, we took sections out, but combined many of the elements into a new section, so there's quite a bit of shuffling back and forth. And then, in the end, what really drove this is the HTRZ, but at the same time, we also fixed quite a few things that maybe were outdated or where, the legal environment has changed to a point where there's, certain tools that the ordinance was based on that we really have a hard time using nowadays whenever there's a lot of discretion that a public body has. It's, we are on a lot, safer footing if there are clear criteria where you and the city council can say, check, 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 fulfilled, versus language that keeps things open and says, planning commission may recommend if, and so on. So that's what's going on here. So here's the motion. One thing that I should also mention is development in the definitions was changed, and there were some modifications and addition to the term. In the staff report, or at the very end of the ordinance, you can see that. Basically, that's a cleanup item. It's not really deeply related to this zone in particular. The reason why we went this direction is in some areas, or in many areas really in the code, the term development is sort of in the middle of the decision of if an action triggers, let's say, a small-scale master plan or another type of permit. And the way that can play out is if there's something very minor, let's say in a particular zone, someone changes a water heater, if the ordinance gets read literally, that could mean a zoning approval, like a site plan approval, which is, you laugh, we laugh too, which, that's not the intent. So this was a cleanup in order to make sure that there isn't a misunderstanding. Common sense would say you change a water heater somewhere in a commercial building, that doesn't mean the city has to look at your parking lot, your landscaping, and so on and so on.
On the drive-through, are we limiting or eliminating?
Pardon me?
On the drive-through, are we limiting what we allow, or are we eliminating it altogether?
We are eliminating it in the confines of this zone, since it's high density plus walkability focused. Similar to what you see on Main Street in the form-based code, that has also been eliminated. The reason Tres Gatos has its drive-through, the coffee shop across the street, is that they predated the form-based code.
They snuck in.
Yeah.
I think that makes better sense for mixed use, not having drive-throughs. I could see that being problematic, because there's usually not much space.
Well, you'd rather have them walk anyway in a neighborhood.
Yeah, the other consideration is these drive-throughs will inevitably meet with a sidewalk, and then you have a situation where some drive-throughs can be very, very busy. You think about In-N-Out Burger, for example, or Chick-fil-A, and so you constantly have cars crossing, and sometimes in a situation where you may not have very good sight distance.
So when you're trying to encourage pedestrians, you don't introduce more vehicles.
Exactly.
I didn't think of it that way, but
Yeah.
And in the material in the packet, you'll realize that this is for a very limited area. We're not eliminating them through large swaths. They're very
It's just in the
targeted.
TOD zone.
You could
small
throw a walk
areas.
to a drive-through from
On
there.
the,
Yeah.
on the little cheat sheet you had like 3 clips ago, can we get that in an email?
Let's see.
Sure. You mean
The one that you
the
highlighted some important things. Okay.
yeah, I can also send you more. I mean, this is just an excerpt of a white
Covered a lot
paper.
in a little-
Pardon me?
That covered a lot of information in a little.
Yeah, I can send you that, sure.
Yeah. No, I think this is in line with all the studies that we've done. This is in line with the direction we've been going, and we're complying with state, yeah.
Yeah, it is a public hearing.
Oh, that's what you're,
Yeah, it's a public hearing matter.
okay.
So we need
Okay,
to-
let's open this up for public hearing.
Seeing no comments, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I like the amendment. I think it makes sense.
I would entertain a motion.
I move that we recommend approval of the amendment to section 17-7-17 of the Midvale City Municipal Code entitled Transit Oriented Development Overlay Zone, TODO, and section 17-2-4 to clarify the definition of the terms development as provided in the attachments with the finding noted in the staff report.
I'll second.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Erickson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Snow?
Yes.
Commissioner Lidke?
Yes.
Commissioner Tippett?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then Planning Department report.
The report is next week. We have our Planning Commission dinner at the Bambino down the street. Please pre-order. I hope I still get a menu that I can email to you. Their website doesn't seem to be working right now.
Because I could access it today.
You could?
Uh-huh.
Is that, and maybe it's something when you access it from the city or it's my computer, I couldn't.
Yeah, I can, yeah.
If you can, that's great. So if you want to just email it to me, what you want, and then I will forward it on to Bambino.
Vandalena, I have a paper copy we
It
can
works?
scan
Okay.
and send out.
Okay, if it's up to date, sure.
Okay,
I just
Cool.
opened it, guys. So
sweet.
Oh,
So get those orders in.
Pardon me.
Probably you want them by Wednesday?
I think the earlier the better.
Okay.
I mean, if
By end of this week.
that would be great, I think. I think they would appreciate that.
Okay.
You know, a pretty small business, I don't know how they, if someone has to run to Costco to get the ingredients, I'm not sure.
Are you going to get someone from Cactus and Tropicals to be there to give us an open tour of their new facility?
You're just adding on all these
I
things.
know.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice.
Cool.
I can definitely ask. I mean, there's no law against asking.
Yeah, just go in and say who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you know who I am?
Well, they close at 6.
Yeah,
You'd
so-
have to get someone there.
Yeah.
And then our next meeting, what chapter are we reading up to? Do you recall?
I don't right now, but I'll email it out to you.
4, I think it's 4.
I think it's
That sounds right,
Okay.
but I'll
We just have
confirm
Robin read
that.
to you.
I'll call you and read to you.
Okay. Are we good? Yeah?
Yes.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:58.